Narcissists hate parenting, but they will never admit this truth. When people hear the word parenting, they imagine care, sacrifice, emotional responsibility, and unconditional love for a child. But when it comes to a narcissist, parenting is not seen as a sacred responsibility. It is often seen as a loss of control, a loss of attention, and a disruption to their self-centered world. And this is why the truth about narcissistic parents is far more uncomfortable than most people are willing to accept. A narcissist does not experience parenting the same way a healthy person does. Instead of seeing a child as a life they are responsible for nurturing, they often see the child as an extension of themselves or a burden that competes for attention. This creates a very unstable emotional environment inside the household, where love is conditional and attention is always controlled. At the beginning, a narcissist may even appear excited about becoming a parent. They may take pictures, show off the child publicly, and enjoy the attention they receive from others. But this phase is not about the child at all. It is about how the child enhances their image in the eyes of society. And once that attention fades or responsibilities increase, their interest often starts to change dramatically, because parenting requires consistency, patience, and emotional regulation. And these are exactly the areas where narcissists struggle the most. A child needs emotional safety, understanding, and steady support, even during difficult phases of growth. But a narcissist struggles when the child begins to demand emotional energy instead of just admiration or compliance. As the child grows and starts developing their own personality, opinions, and needs, the narcissist begins to feel challenged without even consciously realizing it. Because now, they are no longer the center of attention in every moment. The child has needs that are separate from the narcissist's ego. This is where emotional friction starts to build inside the household. The narcissist may become irritated when the child is emotional, expressive, or independent. Instead of guiding the child through emotions, they may dismiss, criticize, or emotionally withdraw, because in their mind, emotional needs from others often feel like demands rather than responsibilities. And this is where many children of narcissistic parents start to feel confused. They may not understand why love feels inconsistent, or why approval feels conditional. One moment they may receive attention, praise, or warmth, and the next moment they may experience emotional coldness, criticism, or silent treatment. This unpredictable emotional pattern creates deep psychological confusion in the child's mind. They start adjusting their behavior constantly just to avoid negative reactions. They learn to stay quiet, stay small, or stay emotionally careful just to maintain peace. And without realizing it, they begin to disconnect from their own emotional expression. For the narcissistic parent, control becomes more important than connection. They may try to shape the child into someone who reflects their expectations rather than someone who is emotionally free. Instead of asking, "Who is my child becoming?" they often focus on, "How does my child reflect on me?" And this difference changes everything about the parent-child relationship. A healthy parent sees individuality as growth. A narcissistic parent may see individuality as rebellion. A healthy parent supports emotional development. A narcissistic parent may see emotions as inconvenience or weakness. Over time, this creates emotional distance between the child and the parent. Not always physical distance, but emotional separation that grows quietly in the background. The child may still live in the same house, eat at the same table, and follow the same rules, but emotionally, they start feeling unseen and misunderstood. One of the most painful realities in narcissistic parenting is emotional invalidation. When a child expresses sadness, fear, or confusion, it may be ignored or dismissed. When a child expresses achievement or joy, it may be redirected back to the parent's ego. So the child slowly learns that their emotional world does not matter as much as the parent's emotional needs. And this is where long-term psychological effects begin to form. Some children become overly anxious, constantly trying to please others to avoid rejection. Others become emotionally distant, learning that vulnerability is not safe, and some grow up struggling to understand their own identity outside of external validation. The narcissistic parent, however, rarely sees themselves as the problem, because accountability feels threatening to their self-image. Instead of reflecting on their behavior, they often justify it as discipline, strictness, or tough love. But in reality, emotional consistency and empathy are missing from the equation. And here is the deeper truth that many people struggle to accept. Narcissists do not necessarily hate their children, but they often struggle deeply with the emotional responsibility that parenting requires, because parenting demands empathy, patience, and the ability to put someone else's needs first consistently. And that is exactly where their emotional limitations become visible. As children grow older, they begin to see patterns more clearly. They start recognizing that love was often conditional on behavior or compliance. They start noticing that emotional support was inconsistent or self-centered. And this realization can create both grief and clarity at the same time. Grief for the childhood they did not emotionally receive, and clarity about why the relationship always felt unbalanced or confusing. Some children distance themselves emotionally in adulthood. Others try to maintain connection but with strong boundaries in place. And some continue seeking approval that they never fully received in childhood. But healing begins when the pattern is finally understood clearly, when the child stops internalizing the emotional instability as their fault and starts recognizing that the problem was never their emotional needs. It was the parent's inability to consistently meet those needs. The truth about narcissistic parenting is not simple, and it is not comfortable. But understanding it helps break the cycle of confusion and self-blame, because once you see the pattern clearly, you stop chasing emotional validation from someone who was never able to give it consistently.